The November rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Luminescence, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. I watched the droplets race down the glass, my reflection staring back at me. A 32-year-old black woman in a champagne-colored silk dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. My locks were swept up in an elegant updo, gold hoops catching the warm candlelight. I looked perfect. I felt numb. Mrs. Patterson, your party will be arriving shortly. The maitre d' whispered discreetly, refilling my water glass. Can I bring you anything while you wait? I shook my head, managing a polite smile. I'm fine, thank you. But I wasn't fine. Nothing about tonight was fine. My name is Naomi Patterson, and today was supposed to be my 32nd birthday celebration. My husband Marcus had insisted on booking Luminescence 6 months ago, back when things between us still felt salvageable. Back when I could still pretend not to notice the late nights at the office, the password changes on his phone, the perfume that wasn't mine clinging to his shirts. I'd been married to Marcus for 8 years. We met at Columbia, both ambitious graduate students with dreams bigger than New York itself. He was studying finance. I was getting my MBA. He was charming, driven, and came from the kind of old-money Atlanta family that opened doors before you even knocked. I came from a single mother in Baltimore who worked 2 jobs to put me through undergrad. Marcus said he loved that about me. My hustle, my hunger, my refusal to apologize for taking up space. That was before the money really started rolling in, before his hedge fund took off, before I became less of a partner and more of an accessory. The restaurant buzzed with the quiet conversations of Manhattan's elite, tech executives, fashion moguls, Broadway producers. Crystal clinked against fine china. Somewhere, a woman laughed, the sound sharp and bright. My stomach twisted. I pulled out my phone, checking the time. 7:47 p.m. Marcus was 17 minutes late. Our reservation was for 7:30, and the table I'd requested, the intimate corner booth overlooking Central Park, was being held specially. I'd invited my closest friends, Jasmine, my college roommate who now ran a successful PR firm in Brooklyn, Deshawn, my cousin who taught high school English in Harlem, and Kendra, my former colleague from my consulting days who'd become like a sister. The truth was, I'd almost canceled tonight. 3 weeks ago, I'd found the credit card statement Marcus thought he'd hidden. Charges from hotels in Midtown, jewelry from Tiffany's that I'd never received. Flowers sent to an address in Tribeca that wasn't our penthouse in the Upper West Side. I'd hired a private investigator. His name was Raymond Chen, a retired NYPD detective with kind eyes and a gentle way of delivering devastating news. The photos came back last Tuesday. Marcus with her, a petite woman with honey blonde hair and legs that went on forever, laughing over cocktails at some rooftop bar. His hand on her lower back, her lips on his cheek. The evidence was irrefutable, clinical, soul-crushing. But instead of confronting him, I'd decided to wait. To see if he'd have the audacity to bring his betrayal into the light. To test just how little respect he had left for me. I was about to get my answer. The restaurant doors swung open and Marcus strode in like he owned the place. At 34, my husband was undeniably handsome. Tall, athletic build, the kind of smooth brown skin that made makeup artists weep with envy, a perfectly trimmed beard, and a smile that could sell ice to Alaska. Tonight he wore a Tom Ford suit, navy blue with subtle pinstripes, his gold Rolex catching the light. Behind him was Jasmine, Deshawn, and Kendra, their faces bright with birthday excitement. And next to Marcus, laughing at something he'd just said, was her. The mistress had a name. Chelsea Vandermeer, 26 years old, daughter of some Connecticut real estate magnate. She worked in brand consulting, which as far as I could tell meant posting on Instagram and attending charity galas. Tonight she wore a red cocktail dress that screamed, "Look at me," with diamond earrings that probably cost more than my car. And Marcus had brought her. To my birthday dinner. To our table. My hands remained steady as I stood to greet them, my smile fixed in place like armor. Baby, Marcus called out, crossing the restaurant with his arms open. He kissed my cheek, the gesture perfunctory. Sorry we're late. Traffic was insane coming from the office. Office, I repeated softly. Of course. Jasmine rushed over, pulling me into a genuine hug. She was a gorgeous, dark-skinned woman with natural hair styled in a twist-out, wearing a deep purple jumpsuit that showed off her curves. Happy birthday, sis. You look absolutely stunning. Deshawn was next. My younger cousin by 3 years, tall and lanky with tortoiseshell glasses and a warm smile. 32 looks good on you, Nay. He handed me a wrapped gift, something book-shaped. Kendra, a petite Korean-American woman with sharp fashion sense and sharper business instincts, squeezed my hand knowingly. Her eyes flickered to Chelsea and back to me, asking a silent question. I gave the smallest shake of my head. Not yet. Everyone, this is Chelsea, Marcus announced, his hand resting casually on her lower back. The same gesture from the private investigator's photos. She's been consulting on our new marketing strategy at the firm. When she mentioned she had no plans tonight, I thought, why not bring her along? The more the merrier, right? The audacity was breathtaking. The sheer, unbridled audacity. Chelsea extended her hand, her smile wide and seemingly genuine. It's so lovely to meet you, Naomi. Marcus has told me so much about you. Happy birthday. I hope it's okay that I crashed, Marcus insisted. Her voice had that particular Upper East Side lilt, the kind that came from boarding schools and summer homes in the Hamptons. Up close, she was even prettier than her photos. Doe eyes, perfect nose, skin that glowed with expensive facials and youth. I took her hand, my grip firm. How thoughtful of my husband. Please join us. We settled into the booth, the seating arrangement a masterclass in psychological warfare. Marcus positioned Chelsea directly across from me, with Jasmine on my left and Kendra on my right. Deshawn sat next to Chelsea, looking increasingly uncomfortable as the situation's oddness registered. The waiter appeared, a young man with slicked back hair and impeccable service training. Good evening, everyone. My name is Julian, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with some drinks? Champagne, Marcus declared. The Cristal, we're celebrating. Chelsea clapped her hands together. Oh, I love Cristal. Marcus, you really know how to show a girl a good time. The table fell silent. Jasmine's eyes widened. Deshawn coughed awkwardly. Kendra's jaw clenched so hard I could hear her teeth grind. But I simply smiled, picking up my menu. Actually, Julian, I'll start with a glass of the Chateau Margaux 2015. The Merlot, please. Excellent choice, ma'am, Julian replied, clearly sensing the tension, but maintaining professional composure. As he left to get our drinks, Marcus launched into a story about his latest acquisition, some tech startup in Silicon Valley that was going to revolutionize fintech. Chelsea hung on his every word, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm, playing her role perfectly. I watched them like a scientist observing specimens in a lab. Every gesture, every glance, every intimate moment they thought was subtle, but was actually screaming their affair to anyone with eyes. Jasmine leaned close to me. Naomi, she whispered, her voice tight with controlled rage. What the hell is going on? I patted her hand. Just watch. The drinks arrived. Marcus raised his champagne flute, Chelsea mimicking his gesture. To Naomi, he said, his smile broad and empty. My beautiful wife. 32 years of excellence. Here's to many more. To Naomi, everyone echoed, though Chelsea's voice rang out just a beat too enthusiastic, just a note too familiar with my husband's cadence. I sipped my wine, letting its complexity coat my tongue. Dark fruit, tobacco, a hint of leather. It tasted like expensive vengeance. So, Chelsea, I said, setting down my glass. Tell me about yourself. How did you and Marcus meet? She brightened, leaning forward. Oh, it's such a funny story. I was actually consulting for a client who was considering investing with Marcus's fund. We met at a pitch meeting about 6 months ago, and we just clicked professionally. He's been such an incredible mentor. 6 months, the same time frame when the late nights started, when the distance between us became a chasm. Mentor, I repeated. How wonderful. Marcus has always been so generous with his time and attention. Kendra kicked me under the table. I ignored her. You know, Chelsea continued, oblivious or uncaring, Marcus talks about you all the time. He says you're incredibly smart, that you basically built the operational systems for his fund in the early days. Did he? I turned to Marcus, who was suddenly very interested in his menu. How sweet of you, darling. Well, it's true, he muttered. You were instrumental in the beginning. Were, past tense, as if my contributions had an expiration date. The waiter returned to take our orders. The menu at Luminescence was prix fixe, $450 per person for a 7-course tasting menu, with wine pairings available for an additional $200. It was the kind of place where you didn't ask prices. You just accepted that excellence cost money. Marcus, playing the magnanimous host, ordered the wine pairings for the table. Chelsea squealed with delight. Deshawn looked increasingly like he wanted to crawl under the table. As Julian left with our orders, I excused myself to the restroom. Kendra immediately followed. The ladies' room at Luminescence was a work of art. Marble everywhere, soft lighting, fresh roses in crystal vases. I stood at the sink, gripping the cool stone, staring at my reflection. Okay, talk to me, Kendra said, locking the door behind us. Because I'm about 2 seconds from throwing my drink in that girl's face, and I need to know if you want me to hold back or let loose. I turned to face her. He's having an affair with her. No shit, Kendra said flatly. A blind person could see that. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to let him humiliate himself, I said quietly. I'm going to let him think he's gotten away with it. And then I'm going to make him pay for every single lie. Kendra studied me, her sharp business mind clearly calculating. You have a plan. I have several plans, I corrected. But tonight I want him to feel secure, confident, like he's pulled off the perfect crime. And the bill? I smiled, pulling out my phone. I'd already arranged everything with the restaurant manager that afternoon. Chelsea's going to pay for dinner tonight. Every last penny of it. Kendra's eyes went wide. Then a slow, vicious smile spread across her face. You're diabolical. I'm done being the understanding wife, I said. I'm done making excuses for him. I'm done shrinking myself to make room for his ego. We returned to the table just as the first course arrived. Butter-poached lobster with caviar and microgreens. The conversation had shifted to real estate, with Chelsea discussing her family's portfolio of properties throughout New England. Daddy just bought another compound in Martha's Vineyard, she was saying, delicately picking at her lobster. 12 bedrooms oceanfront. He's talking about letting me host corporate retreats there. Sounds lovely, I said, savoring my lobster. It was perfectly cooked, melting on my tongue. As the courses progressed, Wagyu beef, truffle risotto, pan-seared scallops, so did Chelsea's comfort level. She laughed louder, touched Marcus more frequently, made inside jokes that only they understood. She was marking her territory, right in front of me, at my birthday dinner. And Marcus let her. He encouraged it even, shooting her fond looks, refilling her wine glass, his leg probably pressed against hers under the table. Jasmine was vibrating with suppressed rage. Deshawn kept trying to change the subject to neutral topics like sports or movies. Kendra watched everything with the cool assessment of a surgeon planning an operation. By the time dessert arrived, a deconstructed chocolate souffle with gold leaf, I was calm, centered, ready. Julian approached the table with a leather portfolio. I have the check here. Will this be together or separate? Put it on my card, Marcus said smoothly, reaching for his wallet. Actually, I interjected, my voice pleasant. Julian and I had a conversation earlier. The check goes to Chelsea. The table froze. Chelsea's smile faltered. I'm sorry. What? The birthday girl doesn't pay for her own dinner, I explained, my tone reasonable. And Marcus has been so generous bringing you tonight, making you feel included. It seems only right that you cover the evening. Call it a birthday gift. Chelsea laughed uncertainly, looking to Marcus for rescue. Oh, I don't think. The total is $8,347.63, Julian said quietly, holding out the leather portfolio to Chelsea. Including gratuity. The color drained from Chelsea's face. 8,000! That can't be right, Marcus sputtered, finally finding his voice. Julian, put it on my card. I'm afraid Mrs. Patterson was very specific when she made the arrangements this afternoon, Julian replied, his professional mask firmly in place. The check is assigned to Ms. Vandermeer. I leaned back in my chair, swirling the last of my wine. Is there a problem, Chelsea? I thought a girl from your background wouldn't blink at a dinner bill. Daddy's Martha's Vineyard compound must generate quite the cash flow. She was trapped, and she knew it. To refuse would be to admit she was a guest who'd overstepped. To pay would be to acknowledge the humiliation. She reached for her purse with trembling hands, pulling out a black American Express card. This is insane, Marcus hissed at me. Naomi, stop this. Stop what? I asked innocently. Celebrating my birthday? Accepting a generous gift from your colleague? You're the one who brought her, Marcus. You're the one who made her part of tonight. The transaction processed in excruciating silence. When Julian returned with the receipt, Chelsea's signature was shaky. Thank you for dining with us this evening, Julian said, his eyes meeting mine with something like respect. Happy birthday, Mrs. Patterson. I stood, gathering my clutch and the gifts from my friends. Thank you all for coming. This has been the most memorable birthday I've ever had. Jasmine, Deshawn, and Kendra stood with me, forming a united front. Naomi, Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous. We need to talk. Do we? I met his eyes, seeing the man I'd loved crumbling away, revealing the stranger he'd become. I don't think there's anything left to say, at least, not tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening, darling. And Chelsea, thanks for dinner. It was absolutely perfect. I walked out of Luminescence with my head high, my friends flanking me, leaving my husband and his mistress to face the wreckage of their own making. Outside, the November rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and gleaming under the streetlights. The air was cold and clean, and I breathed it in deeply, feeling something unfurl in my chest. It wasn't quite freedom yet, but it was the beginning of it. The morning after my birthday dinner, I woke up in Jasmine's guest bedroom in Park Slope. The room was painted a soothing sage green, with bookshelves crammed with titles ranging from marketing textbooks to Toni Morrison novels. Weak November sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, and I could hear the sounds of Brooklyn coming alive. Car doors slamming, a dog barking, someone yelling about parking spots. I'd refused to go home last night. After leaving Luminescence, the four of us had taken an Uber to Jasmine's brownstone, where we'd stayed up until 3 a.m, drinking wine and processing what had happened. My phone had been buzzing nonstop. 47 missed calls from Marcus. 32 text messages ranging from angry to pleading to threatening. I hadn't read a single one. You're awake, Jasmine said, appearing in the doorway with 2 mugs of coffee. She was wearing a silk robe, her natural hair wrapped in a purple bonnet. I made it strong. Figured you'd need it. I sat up, accepting the coffee gratefully. Thank you, for everything. She settled onto the edge of the bed, her face serious. What's your next move? That was Jasmine. Always strategic, always thinking 3 steps ahead. It was what made her brilliant at PR crisis management, and an invaluable friend. Lawyer, I said simply. Raymond, the private investigator, recommended someone. Simone Lawson. She specializes in high net worth divorces. I know Simone, Jasmine said, her eyes lighting up. She represented my client's sister last year. Took her tech bro husband for everything he had. She's ruthless. Good. I sipped my coffee, feeling the caffeine begin to work its magic. Because I'm done being nice. My phone buzzed again on the nightstand. This time it was a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Naomi Patterson? The voice was female, crisp, professional. Yes? This is Simone Lawson. I received a referral from Raymond Chen. He mentioned you might be in need of legal representation. I met Jasmine's eyes, finding strength there. Yes I am. Can you come to my office today? Say 11 o'clock. I'm in Midtown near Bryant Park. I glanced at the clock. 9:47 a.m. I'll be there. After hanging up, I realized I had nothing to wear except last night's silk dress. Jasmine, reading my mind, was already heading to her closet. You're a size 8, right? I've got a blazer and slacks that'll work. Professional armor for professional warfare. By 10:30, I was dressed in Jasmine's charcoal gray suit, my locks pulled back into a sleek bun, minimal makeup emphasizing my features. I looked like the woman I'd been before Marcus, confident, capable, ready for anything. The Uber dropped me off in front of a glass tower on 42nd Street. Simone Lawson's office was on the 34th floor, a corner suite with breathtaking views of Manhattan. The reception area was all clean lines and expensive art, the kind of space designed to intimidate. Mrs. Patterson, the receptionist said warmly. Ms. Lawson is expecting you. Please go right in. Simone Lawson was a black woman in her late 40s, with close-cropped natural hair going silver at the temples, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a burgundy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary and radiated the kind of confidence that came from winning battles other people thought were unwinnable. Naomi, she said, rising to shake my hand. Her grip was firm, assessing. Please sit. Coffee? Water? Water, thank you. As I settled into a leather chair, Simone pulled out a yellow legal pad. Raymond gave me the basics, but I want to hear it from you. Start from the beginning. And so I told her everything. The late nights, the credit card statements, the private investigator's photos. The way Marcus had slowly eroded my confidence over the years, making me feel like my contributions to his success were footnotes rather than foundations. And finally, last night, bringing his mistress to my birthday dinner, the sheer disrespect of it all. Simone took notes, her expression never changing, professional distance maintained. When I finished, she set down her pen and leaned back. Okay, let's talk about assets. The next hour was a clinical dissection of my marriage's financial anatomy. The penthouse on the Upper West Side, purchased 8 years ago for $3.2 million, now worth close to $5 million. The house in Sag Harbor, Marcus's impulse buy 3 summers ago, valued at $2.8 million. His hedge fund, Vanguard Capital Partners, with assets under management exceeding $400 million. My own investment accounts, depleted over the years to fund his business expenses when cash flow was tight. Here's what you need to understand, Simone said, her voice measured. New York is an equitable distribution state, not community property. That means the court won't automatically split things 50-50. They'll look at contributions, financial and otherwise, to the marriage. I built the operational infrastructure for his entire company, I said. The systems, the processes, the investor relations strategy in the early days. I have emails, documents, everything proving my role. Simone's smile was sharp. Then we're going to make sure you get what you're owed. But Naomi, I need to ask, are you prepared for how ugly this might get? Men like your husband don't give up wealth without a fight. I thought about last night, about Chelsea's smug smile, about Marcus's hand on her back, about 8 years of slowly becoming invisible in my own marriage. Let him fight, I said quietly. I'm not backing down. Good. Simone stood, extending her hand again. Then let's go to war. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since finding that credit card statement, I wasn't reacting to Marcus's choices. I was making my own. My phone buzzed as I walked toward Bryant Park. A text from Marcus. "Where the hell are you? We need to talk. This is ridiculous." I typed back a single line. "My lawyer will be in touch." Then I blocked his number. The afternoon was spent making arrangements. I met with a realtor Simone recommended about temporary housing. I couldn't stay with Jasmine forever, and I refused to return to the penthouse. We looked at 3 apartments in the Upper West Side, all furnished short-term rentals. I settled on a 1-bedroom in a pre-war building on West 72nd Street, with hardwood floors, crown molding, and windows overlooking the tree-lined street. It was smaller than what I was used to, but it was mine. Next, I went to our bank, Chase Private Client on Park Avenue, and opened an individual account, transferring half of our joint savings. It was perfectly legal, Simone had assured me. I was entitled to access our marital assets. The bank manager, a middle-aged white man named Richard who'd handled our accounts for years, looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Patterson, are you sure about this? Perhaps you should discuss this with your husband first?" My husband forfeited discussion privileges when he brought his mistress to my birthday dinner. I said calmly. "Is there a problem processing this transaction?" Richard's discomfort deepened, but he completed the transfer. $247,000 moved from joint to individual, a number that represented years of careful saving and Marcus's bonuses. My final stop was the penthouse. I'd called ahead to make sure Marcus was at his office. I didn't want a confrontation, just my belongings. The doorman, Luis, greeted me with his usual warmth. "Mrs. Patterson, good to see you. Mr. Patterson said you might be stopping by." "Did he?" I kept my voice neutral. Luis leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Between you and me, ma'am, that whole situation last night, bringing that girl here sometimes when you're not around, that's not right. A lot of us in the building, we think you deserve better." The kindness in his words nearly broke my composure. "Thank you, Luis. That means more than you know." The penthouse felt like a museum of someone else's life. 34th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, marble countertops, a chef's kitchen that Marcus had insisted on but rarely used. We'd hosted parties here, celebrated anniversaries, made love in every room. Now it was just empty space. I moved methodically, packing my clothes, my books, my photographs, the ones of me and my mother, of Jasmine and me in college, of Deshawn's high school graduation. I left the wedding photos on the walls. Marcus could figure out what to do with those ghosts. In his home office, I hesitated. Then, remembering Simone's advice to document everything, I opened his filing cabinet. What I found made my blood run cold. Insurance policies. On me. 3 different life insurance policies, all taken out within the last year, all with death benefits totaling $5 million. Marcus was the sole beneficiary. My hands shook as I photographed every page with my phone. This was more than an affair. This was premeditation. Planning. I called Simone immediately. "I found something. Life insurance policies. Multiple ones." "Don't touch anything else," she said sharply. "Leave now. Forward me those photos. This changes things, Naomi. This changes everything." I grabbed my suitcases and left, not looking back at the penthouse that had been my home for 8 years. As Luis helped me load everything into an Uber, I realized I wasn't sad. I was angry. Furiously, righteously angry. The anger sustained me through the next several days, moving into the new apartment. Meeting with Simone again to discuss the insurance policies, she'd immediately filed an emergency motion for a restraining order, concerned about what Marcus might be planning. Calling my mother in Baltimore to tell her I was leaving Marcus, hearing her say, "About damn time, baby girl." I never trusted that man. On day 4, Jasmine invited me to lunch at a soul food restaurant in Bed-Stuy called Sister's Place. The dining room was warm and welcoming, filled with the scent of collard greens and fried chicken, vintage photographs of black musicians and activists covering the walls. Kendra and Deshawn were already there, seated in a booth near the back. "How you holding up?" Deshawn asked, standing to hug me. "I'm surviving," I said, sliding into the booth, taking it one day at a time. The waitress, an older black woman with gray locks and kind eyes, took our orders. We fell into easy conversation. Deshawn's students, Jasmine's latest PR campaign, Kendra's tech startup acquisition. Normal things, human things. For an hour, I almost forgot about Marcus and Chelsea and insurance policies. Then Kendra's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression darkened. "You need to see this." She turned her phone toward me. It was a post on Marcus's Instagram, a photo of him and Chelsea at some charity gala, both dressed to the nines, her hand resting possessively on his chest. The caption read, "Sometimes life surprises you with exactly what you need. Blessed are for new beginnings." The restaurant went quiet around me, or maybe that was just the roaring in my ears. "That mother..." Jasmine started. 53 likes already," Kendra said, her voice tight. "And counting." Deshawn was reading the comments. "People are eating this up. You two are so cute. Love looks good on you. Jesus, do they not know he's married?" "Some of them do," I said, scrolling through the comments. "Look, what about your wife?" And his response, "Moving forward toward happiness." The audacity was breathtaking. He'd gone from secret affair to public relationship in less than a week. "Let me handle this," Jasmine said, her PR instincts kicking in. "I can make some calls, get the real story out there." "No." I set Kendra's phone down carefully. "Let him have his moment. Let him think he's won." "Naomi, I'm serious. He wants to play this publicly? Fine. But when I respond, it won't be through Instagram. It'll be through the courts, through divorce papers, through forensic accountants who'll tear apart every transaction he's ever made." The waitress brought our food: fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens, cornbread. Comfort food, the kind my mother used to make. I picked up a piece of chicken, forcing myself to eat despite the anger churning in my stomach. "He's underestimating you," Kendra said quietly. "He thinks you'll go quietly, take a settlement, disappear." "He's always underestimated me," I replied. "It's his fatal flaw." 3 weeks after my birthday dinner, I sat in Simone's office reviewing documents that painted a devastating picture of my marriage. Forensic accountant reports covered her conference table, each page revealing another layer of Marcus's deception. "Look at this," Simone said, tapping a highlighted section. "Wire transfers to an LLC in Delaware. Covenant Holdings. $850,000 over the past 18 months. What is Covenant Holdings?" That's the interesting part. Simone pulled out another document. It's a shell company. The registered agent is a law firm in Wilmington, but when we dug deeper, we found the actual owner, Chelsea Vandermeer's father, Richard Vandermeer. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Marcus has been funneling money to her family. It gets worse. Simone handed me another stack of papers. These are loan documents. Marcus took out a $2 million line of credit against the Sag Harbor house 3 months ago. The money went to Covenant Holdings as an investment opportunity. He mortgaged our house without telling me. In New York, both spouses need to sign off on mortgaging marital property. Your signature on these documents is forged. I stared at the signature that looked like mine but wasn't, close enough to pass casual inspection. But the loops were wrong, the pressure different. He'd committed fraud against his own wife. "We're filing additional motions," Simone said. Fraud, forgery, and given those insurance policies, we're also involving the district attorney's office. This isn't just divorce, Naomi. This could be criminal. Over the next weeks, my life became a series of depositions, meetings with investigators, and slowly unraveling the financial web Marcus had woven. The forensic accountant, a brilliant South Asian woman named Priya Sharma, worked 18-hour days tracing money through shell corporations and offshore accounts. "Your husband is sophisticated," Priya said during one meeting. "But sophisticated criminals often get cocky. They leave breadcrumbs, and Marcus left a whole trail." Meanwhile, Marcus's public relationship with Chelsea intensified. They were everywhere: society pages, charity events, restaurant openings. He'd moved her into the penthouse, according to Luis, who still texted me occasional updates. Chelsea had redecorated, throwing out furniture I'd carefully selected, replacing my taste with her own. It hurt, but it also fueled my resolve. One cold December afternoon, I met with Detective Sarah Michaels from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. She was a white woman in her early 50s, with short gray hair and sharp blue eyes that had seen too much. "Mrs. Patterson, I want to be straight with you," she said, settling into a chair across from me in Simone's conference room. "The insurance policies, combined with the forged documents and hidden assets, present a concerning pattern. We're opening an investigation. You think he was planning to—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "I think your husband has demonstrated a willingness to commit fraud for financial gain. The insurance policies could be legitimate future planning, or they could be something darker. We need to investigate." The next morning, detectives executed a search warrant on Marcus's office at Vanguard Capital Partners. I wasn't there, but Jasmine was. She'd started following the story as it developed, her PR instincts sensing something explosive. She called me as it was happening. "Naomi, you won't believe this. They're bringing out boxes, computers. Marcus is screaming at his lawyers. It's chaos." That evening, the story broke. Not on social media or gossip sites, on the Wall Street Journal's website. Hedge fund manager under investigation for fraud, possible attempted insurance scheme. The article was devastating. It detailed the shell companies, the forged signatures, the insurance policies. It mentioned Chelsea Vandermeer, describing her as the other woman in a case that reads like a financial thriller. It quoted anonymous sources at Vanguard Capital Partners suggesting the fund itself might be implicated. My phone exploded with messages. Reporters requesting interviews. Old college friends reaching out with support. Marcus's mother calling from Atlanta, demanding to know what I'd done to her son. I ignored most of them. But there was one call I took, from Marcus himself, using an unknown number since I'd blocked his main line. "Are you happy now?" His voice was raw with fury. "You've destroyed everything. My reputation, my business, my life. For what? Because I fell in love with someone else? People divorce, Naomi. You didn't have to make it nuclear." I let him rant, his words washing over me like water. When he finally ran out of steam, I spoke, my voice calm. "You forged my signature, Marcus. You hid assets. You took out insurance policies on my life. You didn't just fall in love. You committed crimes. And you thought I was too weak or too stupid to figure it out. I never wanted to hurt you. You brought your mistress to my birthday dinner." My voice cracked finally, emotion breaking through. "You looked me in the eye and lied, over and over, for months. You treated me like I was nothing, like our 8 years together meant nothing. So don't you dare talk to me about hurt, Marcus. You don't get to play the victim here." Silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of everything broken and irreparable. "I loved you," he said finally, his voice small. "Once." "Once isn't enough," I replied, and hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at the window of my temporary apartment, watching snow begin to fall over Manhattan. The city glowed beneath its white blanket, beautiful and indifferent to human drama. My phone buzzed with a text from Deshawn. "You doing okay? Want company?" I smiled despite everything. "I'm okay. Thank you for checking." But I wasn't okay. Not really. The investigation had validated my suspicions, proven I wasn't crazy or paranoid. Yet vindication felt hollow. I'd spent 8 years building a life with someone who'd been willing to destroy me for money, and a younger woman. The next morning brought more developments. Chelsea's father, Richard Vandermeer, issued a statement through his lawyers denying any knowledge of improper financial arrangements. Chelsea herself posted a tearful video on Instagram, claiming she'd been deceived by Marcus, that she'd thought he was separated, that she was a victim too. "Can you believe this?" Kendra said when we met for coffee at a place near my new apartment. Outside, last night's snow was already turning gray with city grime. "She's playing innocent now?" "Let her play whatever role she wants," I said, warming my hands on my latte. "The investigators will find the truth." And they did. By mid-December, the picture was complete. Marcus had been running a sophisticated scheme for over 2 years. He'd used his hedge fund to create shell companies, then invested client money into these companies, really just moving money around to create the illusion of returns. The Vandermeer family, specifically Richard, had been complicit, providing legitimacy through their real estate connections. Chelsea might not have known the full scope, but she'd known enough. Text messages recovered from Marcus's phone showed her asking about when we'd be together for real, and Marcus responding that he needed to handle the Naomi situation first. The insurance policies had been his solution, making my death more valuable than my life. The realization made me physically sick. I'd married someone capable of contemplating my murder. "The DA wants to prosecute," Simone told me during a meeting a week before Christmas. "Securities fraud, wire fraud, forgery. Marcus is looking at serious prison time if convicted. Chelsea might face charges as an accessory. Richard Vandermeer definitely will. And the divorce? With the criminal charges, you have extraordinary leverage. Marcus's attorneys are already reaching out about settlement." That word, settlement, felt anticlimactic. But this was real life, not a movie. Justice came through legal documents and bank transfers, not dramatic confrontations. On December 23rd, I met Marcus one final time, in a conference room at Simone's office. He looked terrible, weight loss evident in his gaunt face, his expensive suit hanging loose, dark circles under his eyes. The man who'd walked into luminescence with such confidence had been replaced by this hollow shell. Chelsea wasn't with him. According to reports, she'd fled to her family's compound in Connecticut, avoiding media attention and likely cutting a deal with prosecutors. "Naomi," Marcus said when I entered, his voice hoarse. I didn't respond, just took my seat across from him. Simone sat beside me, her presence a reminder that I wasn't alone. Marcus's attorney, a sharp-featured man named Gerald Rothstein, cleared his throat. "My client is prepared to offer a comprehensive settlement. The penthouse, the Sag Harbor house, 60% of all marital assets, full forgiveness of any claims against your separate property, and a cash payment of $1.5 million. I looked at Marcus, who couldn't meet my eyes. "Not enough," Simone said flatly. 75% of marital assets, both properties, $2.5 million cash, and full restitution for funds Mrs. Patterson contributed to Vanguard Capital Partners in the early years, with interest. Additionally, Mr. Patterson provides written acknowledgement of Mrs. Patterson's instrumental role in building his business." "That's excessive," Rothstein started. "Your client committed fraud and forgery," Simone interrupted. "He took out insurance policies on my client's life while actively embezzling marital funds. The criminal charges alone make this a generous offer. Take it, or we'll see you in court, where a judge will likely award Mrs. Patterson even more." Marcus finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just give her whatever she wants, Gerald. I'm done fighting." The settlement was finalized within a week. I signed papers that officially ended my marriage. Papers that came with significant financial compensation, but couldn't compensate for lost years, broken trust, or the trauma of realizing the man I'd loved had been willing to harm me. On New Year's Eve, I sat in my apartment, no longer temporary. I'd decided to lease it long-term, with Jasmine, Kendra, and Deshawn. We weren't at some fancy party or exclusive club. We were in our comfortable clothes, eating Chinese takeout, watching the ball drop on TV. "To new beginnings," Jasmine said, raising her glass of champagne as midnight approached. "To surviving," Kendra added. "To family," Deshawn said, looking at each of us. "The one we choose." "To truth," I said quietly. "And to never settling for less than we deserve." Our glasses clinked together as fireworks exploded over the city, welcoming 2026. 6 months after my divorce was finalized, I stood in the lobby of a building in Tribeca, waiting for the real estate agent to arrive. Spring had transformed New York, cherry blossoms blooming in Washington Square Park, people shedding their winter layers, the city feeling reborn. I felt reborn too. The past months had been a journey of reconstruction. Not just rebuilding my life, but discovering who I was beyond being Marcus Patterson's wife. Therapy helped, Dr. Yolanda Chen, a Black woman therapist in Harlem who specialized in recovery from narcissistic relationships, had given me tools to process the betrayal and recognize patterns I'd ignored. "You spent years making yourself smaller," Dr. Chen had said during one session, "dimming your light so his could shine brighter. The work now is remembering how to be fully yourself." Part of that work involved reconnecting with my own ambitions. Before Marcus, I'd dreamed of starting my own consulting firm, helping businesses build sustainable operational systems. I'd abandoned that dream when his hedge fund took off, telling myself I was being supportive, when really I was being erased. Now, with the settlement money and a fire in my belly, I was resurrecting that dream. The real estate agent arrived, an energetic Latina woman named Sofia Martinez, with a warm smile and an encyclopedic knowledge of Manhattan commercial real estate. "Naomi, so good to see you again. Ready to look at the space?" "Absolutely." The office was on the 4th floor of a converted warehouse, with exposed brick, high ceilings, and enormous windows flooding the space with natural light. It was raw, unfinished, full of potential. "It's 2,000 square feet, Sophia explained as we walked through. Previous tenant was a graphic design firm. Zoning allows for professional services, and the landlord is offering a 5-year lease with an option to buy. I could see it, desks arranged to encourage collaboration, a conference room with a view of the Hudson River, plants bringing life to the industrial aesthetic. My company, Patterson Operational Consulting. Or maybe I'd change the name, shed Marcus's surname entirely. Something that was fully mine. "I'll take it," I said. Sophia's eyes widened. "Don't you want to see the other properties I lined up?" "No need. This is the one." Within a month, the office was taking shape. I hired a diverse team, talented people who'd been overlooked by traditional consulting firms. Marcus, a brilliant logistics expert who'd been underemployed due to his stutter. Aaliyah, a recent Columbia MBA grad who was Black and queer and tired of old money firms' microaggressions. Tom, a 50-year-old career changer who brought decades of operations experience from the nonprofit sector. We were small, nimble, hungry, and we were good. Our first client was a mid-sized tech company in Brooklyn struggling with scaling issues. I crafted a comprehensive operational overhaul, implementing systems that increased their efficiency by 40% in 3 months. Word spread. More clients followed. A sustainable fashion brand, a healthcare startup, a chain of independent bookstores fighting Amazon's dominance. I was thriving in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Meanwhile, Marcus's fall continued. The criminal trial had been postponed multiple times, but when it finally began in late spring, the testimony was damning. Former Vanguard employees described a culture of deception. Clients testified about lost investments. The forensic evidence was overwhelming. I didn't attend the trial. I didn't need to. That chapter was closed, but I did follow the news. In late June, the verdict came. Guilty on 12 counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and forgery. Sentencing was scheduled for August. Marcus faced up to 15 years in federal prison. Chelsea had taken a plea deal, testifying against both Marcus and her father in exchange for probation and community service. Richard Vandermeer was fighting his charges, but with Chelsea's testimony, his prospects looked grim. "How do you feel?" Jasmine asked me the day of Marcus's conviction. We were having dinner at a rooftop restaurant in Brooklyn, the Manhattan skyline glittering across the river. "I feel free," I said, surprised by the truth of it. For so long I defined myself through that marriage, Marcus's wife, his support system, his footnote. Now I'm just Naomi, and Naomi is pretty damn impressive. Jasmine laughed, raising her glass. Damn right she is. The next morning, I had an unexpected visitor at my office. Luis, the doorman from my old building, showed up during my lunch break, looking nervous in civilian clothes. "Mrs. Patterson? Sorry, Ms. Williams," he corrected himself, using my maiden name. "I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I wanted to tell you something." "Of course, Luis. What's going on?" "The new tenants in your old penthouse, they're having it completely renovated. But before the contractors started, they found something. A safe, hidden behind a bookshelf in Mr. Patterson's office. The combination didn't work, so they drilled it open." My heart began to race. And there were documents inside. Looked important. The new owners called the police, and the police called that detective, Michaels. She said I should tell you about it. I called Detective Michaels immediately. She arrived at my office within an hour, carrying a banker's box. "Naomi, what we found changes the investigation significantly," she said, setting the box on my conference table. "Your ex-husband kept meticulous records of everything. Every fraudulent transaction, every shell company, communications with the Vandermeers. And there's more." She pulled out a leather-bound journal. "This is Marcus's personal diary. He documented his relationship with Chelsea, his financial schemes, and..." She paused, flipping to a marked page. "His plans regarding you." My hands shook as I took the journal, reading Marcus's handwriting, familiar from grocery lists and anniversary cards, now revealing monstrous thoughts. Naomi is becoming a liability. She's too smart, asking too many questions about the Sag Harbor mortgage. The insurance policies are in place. An accident would be unfortunate but ultimately profitable. Chelsea deserves the life Naomi has, and I deserve to start fresh without complications. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Not tears of sadness, tears of rage. He'd written it down, documented his intention to harm me like it was a business transaction. "This is evidence of premeditated attempted murder," Detective Michaels said gently. "The DA is adding charges. Your ex-husband won't see freedom for a very long time." I nodded, unable to speak. That evening I drove to Baltimore to see my mother. She still lived in the same row house where I'd grown up, though I'd paid off her mortgage with my settlement money. She answered the door in her nursing scrubs. Even at 63, she still worked part-time at Johns Hopkins. "Baby girl," she said, pulling me into a fierce hug. Come in. I made your favorite, crab cakes and collard greens." We ate dinner in her small, warm kitchen, surrounded by photos of family, by memories of struggle and survival. My mother had raised me alone after my father left when I was 5. She'd worked herself to exhaustion to give me opportunities, to send me to college, to teach me I was worthy of taking up space. "Mama," I said finally, pushing my empty plate aside, "I need to tell you something." I told her everything. The diary entries, the premeditation, how close I'd come to danger. She listened in silence, her face growing harder with each revelation. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hands. "Naomi Michelle Williams," she said, using my full maiden name. "You survived. Not just survived, you thrived. You took a man who tried to destroy you and turned his evil back on him through truth and justice. That takes a strength he'll never understand. I was so stupid, Mama. I ignored so many signs. You loved someone who didn't deserve it. That's not stupidity, baby. That's human. But you were also smart enough and strong enough to walk away when you saw the truth. That's what matters." We talked late into the night, And when I finally left, driving back to Manhattan as dawn broke over the Chesapeake Bay, I felt something settle inside me. Peace, maybe. Or acceptance. In August, Marcus was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison, followed by supervised release. The additional attempted murder charges had been devastating to his case. His attorney had tried to argue the diary was fantasy, not plan, but the insurance policies and hidden assets told a different story. I didn't attend the sentencing either. I was busy. My company had just signed its biggest client yet, a national retail chain wanting to overhaul their supply chain operations. The contract was worth $850,000, the same amount Marcus had funneled to the Vandermeers. The symmetry felt like justice of a different kind. On a warm September evening, I hosted a party at my Tribeca office. Not a grand opening, just a celebration with the people who'd supported me through the darkness. Jasmine brought her new girlfriend, a photographer whose work was starting to gain recognition. Deshaun came with his partner, Mark, a social worker he'd been dating for 3 months. Kendra flew in from San Francisco, where her tech company had just secured Series B funding. Dr. Chen came too, along with Simone Lawson, Priya Sharma the forensic accountant, even Detective Michaels and Luis the doorman. My mother made the trip from Baltimore, her eyes bright with pride as she toured my office. "Look at all this," she said, gesturing at the space I'd created. "This is what I always knew you could do." As the party wound down and people began to leave, I stood at the window, looking out at the city lights. Someone came to stand beside me. A man I'd been introduced to earlier, a friend of Deshaun's. His name was Julian, and he taught music at the same school where Deshaun taught English. "Your friend tells me you've had quite a year," Julian said. He was tall, with warm brown skin and thoughtful eyes, wearing a simple button-down and jeans. "That's one way to put it," I replied, smiling. "He also says you're the strongest person he knows." I considered that. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have believed it. I'd felt broken, betrayed, diminished. But I'd discovered something crucial. Strength isn't the absence of breaking. It's what you build from the pieces. "I'm getting there," I said. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" Julian asked. "Just coffee. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people having a conversation." I looked at him, really looked. Saw someone offering connection without agenda, companionship without manipulation. "I'd like that," I said. After everyone left, I stayed in my office alone, walking through the space I'd created from ashes and anger. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Richard Vandermeer sentenced to 12 years for securities fraud. Another piece falling into place. But I wasn't focused on Marcus's world anymore. I was focused on my own. I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. I'd been approached by a publisher about writing a book. Not about the scandal, but about operational excellence, about building systems that scale, about the work I actually knew and loved. The cursor blinked on a blank page, full of possibility. I began to type. On a cold January morning, nearly a year and a half after my birthday dinner at Luminescence, I stood in the same restaurant. This time, I wasn't waiting nervously for a party. I was hosting a celebration. My book, Operational Resilience: Building Systems That Last, had just hit the New York Times bestseller list. My company had grown to 15 employees and was featured in Forbes as one of the most innovative consulting firms in the country. And tonight, I was treating my core team and closest friends to dinner at the place where my new life had begun. Julian was with me. We'd been dating for 6 months, taking things slow, building something based on honesty and mutual respect. He'd never met Marcus, never knew that version of me, only saw who I was becoming. The maitre d' recognized me. "Ms. Williams, wonderful to see you again. Your table is ready." It was the same corner booth overlooking Central Park. But this time, it was filled with people who celebrated my success rather than diminished it. Jasmine and her girlfriend, now engaged. Kendra, who'd flown in from San Francisco specifically for tonight. Deshaun and Mark, bringing the kind of joyful energy that made every gathering better. My mother, elegant in a deep purple dress. My team from the company, Marcus, Aaliyah, Tom, and others who'd become family. And Julian, holding my hand under the table, his presence steady and reassuring. We ordered the tasting menu, the same one from that night. But this time, I tasted every bite, present and grateful. We laughed and told stories, celebrated victories, supported each other through challenges. When the check came, I handed the waiter my card without hesitation. This was my celebration, my success, my life. As we left the restaurant, snow was falling, gentle and clean, coating the city in possibility. My mother hugged me at the curb, waiting for her Uber back to Baltimore. "I'm so proud of you, baby," she whispered. "Not for the money or the success, but for finding yourself again." After she left, Julian and I walked through Central Park, the snow creating a hushed quiet around us. We ended up at Bethesda Fountain, the angel statue rising above us, eternal and watchful. "What are you thinking?" Julian asked, wrapping his scarf around my neck when he noticed me shivering. I thought about Marcus, somewhere in a federal prison, paying for his crimes. I thought about Chelsea, according to reports working at her father's remaining legitimate businesses, her Instagram presence now private and quiet. I thought about the woman I'd been, uncertain, diminished, losing herself piece by piece. And I thought about the woman I'd become, strong, independent, building something meaningful. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing that could happen. That night at the restaurant, when Marcus brought Chelsea, that was my rock bottom. But it was also my liberation." "No regrets?" Julian asked gently. I considered the question honestly. I regret wasting years on someone who didn't value me. But I don't regret what I learned from it. I don't regret the strength I discovered. I don't regret becoming who I am now. He kissed my forehead, and we stood there in the snow, two people at the beginning of something undefined but hopeful. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. "Just saw the final sales numbers for your book. You're not going to believe this, but I would believe it. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. I was capable of far more than anyone, including myself, had ever imagined." The angel fountain stood behind us, and ahead lay the lights of Manhattan, glittering with promise. I'd walked through fire and emerged transformed. I'd faced betrayal and chosen truth. I'd been knocked down and risen stronger. This was my story now. Not the wronged wife, not the victim, not the footnote in someone else's narrative. Just Naomi. Survivor, entrepreneur, author, friend, daughter. Fully unapologetically myself. And that was more than enough.